time. So we may have a Q&A at the end, so I can answer some questions you may have as a result of what I want to say this morning. I don't normally get behind a pulpit and do something that's not a sermon. So what we're doing this morning, it's not really a sermon. I'm calling it State of the Church, but it's not irrelevant to the Scriptures. Let me read a text to you from Matthew 16, starting in verse 13 down to verse 19. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, Peter, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." First place in the New Testament where the word church is used. It's the Greek word ekklesia. It's a gathering of people who are there for a single purpose. I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So we're going to talk about the state of the church today. This certainly has come out of district conference. Judy was there. And if I say something amiss, raise your hand and say, "Yeah, that's not exactly what happened," etc. Feel free to do that. I'm just going to begin and kind of walk through a few slides right here. Living Hope Church is part of the Southern District of the Christian and Missionary Alliance. There are 22 throughout the United States. They're not all landlocked in a certain particular land area. Most of them are part of a landmass. We're the Southern District. We began as part of the Southeastern District, but 55 years ago separated from them and formed the Southern District. The district began as a result of the ministry of one church in Birmingham, the Birmingham Gospel Tabernacle, which in the 1930s to the 1960s had attendances of upwards of 1,600 people. It's a pretty successful ministry of regular worshipers. Tent meetings and city outreach resulted in church planting, increased missions giving, and they planted 13 churches. One such church was First Alliance in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They planted a church between Birmingham all the way up to Chattanooga. And the CMA spread from the hills of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana. The new district was giving on average 20% of its income to the Great Commission, and its influence was significant throughout the South. In some places, the Alliance churches were the largest and most influential churches in town. Today, the total attendance at all Alliance churches in the district is under 1,600. Church health is the exception, as many churches struggle to remain viable. At the moment, there are 24 churches in the Southern District, and until Tuesday evening, no one had been ordained to the gospel ministry in 4 years. 3 men were ordained. It was a great service. And I learned from the DS that 6 to 8 men are in the process of becoming ordained in the Southern District. So that's good news. 3 years ago, the district asked why. Why has this happened? They introduced a process to assess why and began what they called healing the heart of the district. The district was challenged with the following 3 questions, and I'm kind of summarizing. The first question: are the pains and struggles that we are experiencing the result of Christ's attempt to get our attention? Is God trying to get our attention by this downward trend? That's the first question. The second question: is it possible that our efforts at advancement are being met with futility as a result of Christ's discipline upon our district and its churches due to unrecognized or unconfessed sin, past or present? And third are the things that need to be made right with God in order to experience Christ's outpouring, His blessing, renewal, and manifestation of the Spirit's power. So it's very introspective. They actually considered those questions for 1 year. The final 21 days of that were dedicated to prayer and fasting, and it climaxed at the General Council, the District Conference at Johnson City, Tennessee, in 2016, so 2 years ago. And the conference ended with what they called the 8th letter. The 7 letters of Revelation are to the 7 churches, and so they put together what they thought was a letter from God to the churches of the Southern District. They call it the 8th letter. And they responded with a corporate covenant. I have copies of those here if you want to read those things. I was not present for that stuff, any of that stuff, but it was a pretty serious document, owning up to what had happened and so forth. And I don't know the history of what's going on. I just knew the big, broad picture. The short-term result has been a way forward. That's what the DS called it. Challenging church leaders to 4 basic things. The first one was health. All district health begins with healthy pastors and healthy church leaders who lead those healthy churches. And the district is committed to investing in pastors and in churches to make them healthy. Secondly, disciple making. The district is committed to equipping Christ followers to grow in faith, discover and use their spiritual gifts in partnership with others to carry out Christ's kingdom purposes and to become the kind of disciples that Jesus intends. We'll come back to these in a moment. Multiplication. The district is committed to developing ministries that are life-giving, birthing and reproducing disciples, Spirit-led leaders, ministries and churches that launch leaders who will plant healthy churches in the Southern District. They're committed to doing that. And the fourth thing that they finished with was intentionality. The district will intentionally communicate, emphasize, and prioritize those goals to pastors and churches in the Southern District, and those are the commitments that guide what we call DEXCOM, the District Executive Committee. They referred to it as HDMI. H for health, D for disciple making, M for multiplication, I for intentionality. Those are the 4 things that define what came out of that conference that they had in 2016. So, what is our state? I think I'm on. What is our present state? There are 24 churches in the Southern District, as I mentioned a moment ago, and 3 church plants at this moment. Those 3 church plants are very young. Of the 13 churches that are classified as accredited, we're one of them, 10 meet the standards for accreditation in the manual of the CMA. Because of this, the entire district is under developing status, which means that the direction for the district has been pulled away from the district office and it's in the national office. So the national office is very concerned about what's going on in the Southern District and what's going on in the churches down here, so they're involved. Not in some heavy-handed way, but they're definitely involved. To reach accredited status, again, there must be 40 churches, not 24, but 40, maintain a fully funded district office. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes because it's not presently fully funded. Third, they must give into the Great Commission Fund that exceeds the salary of the DS. And I'll point to that in a few minutes too. That's how they measure the viability of the district. If the churches give at least the salary of the district superintendent to the Great Commission. And finally, movement of district churches towards health with regular salvations, regular baptisms, and regular new church plants. Those are the 4 criterion that they use to establish a church as a district as viable, as accredited. Right now it's under a developing status. Since 2016, 2 churches have closed and 2 churches have withdrawn from the alliance. Attendance has dropped below 1,600 across the district. Salvations have dropped, baptisms have dropped, church giving is flat, and giving to the Great Commission is not going up. There are at least 7 district churches that reported no professions of faith between 2013 and 2017, over a period of 5 years. Between that same time, there were an average of 12 churches that reported no baptisms. There are 3 churches that account for 1/2 of the baptisms in the district, and nearly half of the churches have no children in attendance. Financially, the district remains strapped. In most districts, the district operating budget is 5% of money that the churches give them, and 3% of it goes to church planning. Every church who's accredited gives 8% of their income to the district office to run it. 5% of that is for the district office, and 3% of it is for planting churches. In 2015, Dexcom changed it to 7.25 and 3/4%. 7.25 is to run the district office, and 3/4 is to plant churches. So of the 8% that our church sends to the district office, the vast majority of it goes to support the district office. And here's why. At the moment, there are 5 churches in the district of the 24 that actually give 8% to the district office. And we're one of them. So the churches are financially pretty shaky. I don't know why that's the case, it just is. They may need the money to pay their pastor, I don't know. They may have a mortgage that they have to pay. But many churches do not send in their 8%. And at the moment, the district office raises money elsewhere to cover its expenses. The district budget is pretty thin as that goes. The national president has set a goal that each church give 10% of their income to the Great Commission. In the Southern District, 1/2 of the churches already reached that goal. That's great news. Our church has given 25% to the Great Commission in the past. I don't know what our percentage is at the moment. There are 12 churches that are below and the 10%, and 3 that contribute nothing to the Great Commission. There are 8 in our district, 8 non-alliance churches that donate to the Great Commission. So they artificially inflate what it looks like. By the way, none of them are in Huntsville. I asked the DS, if any of them are in Huntsville, I want to know who they are. He said none of them are in Huntsville. There are other individuals who give to the Great Commission, and together, these are individuals in the district from western Florida all the way to Baton Rouge. Not Baton Rouge, New Orleans. Anyways, it covers Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee. That's the vast majority of the district. There are individuals in that area who give to the Great Commission who are not part of an alliance church, and they give almost 2/3 of the money that the district gives to the Great Commission, those individuals. That means that 67% of all money that came into the Great Commission came from churches and people outside of the alliance. Okay? That's a pretty challenging, we heard that at district, I'm thinking, oh, this is not good. It's not. Church health and pastoral health is vital if we are to move forward. That means time and investment in churches and pastors, and the district is very committed to that. They brought a DS in who would address these issues. This could be the removal of some leaders, they think. That's part of what they decided to do. the immediate replanting of some churches, planting and replanting of churches, and is the training of 5 pastors for church revitalization and growth. They have picked 5 pastors in the district to invest in for church revitalization. I'm one of those people. I participated in 2 what they call immersions. I'm going to something else in a week and a half back down to Birmingham, just to infuse them with ideas and invest in their long-term health. 2 district men are tasked with training others and coaching for health and growth in the district. One of them is Larry Williams up in Clarksville. He's kind of like our representative that helps us with. There's a 3rd man named Sean Kennedy. He's a church planter. That's his whole life calling him in. He's done some pretty significant things. Has joined the district staff, speaking to pastors' lives, and Luke and Larry are tasked with disciple making in the district. They have a 4th man who's involved in missions mobilization and missional engagement. All the money for those 4 guys, and they're just part-time people, is raised outside of the district budget. It's only 12 grand, so they don't get much money for doing it. Those things are $12,000. That's added to the district budget. So let's move on past this a little bit. Here are the 4 things that I mentioned a few moments ago. I want to just unpack each one of these just for a few minutes. First of all, health. And here's how the district presents these goals. What does it mean for us to look healthy? First of all, 10 revitalized churches. That's their goal immediately. To revitalize 10 churches in the district out of the 24. The second part of health, 3 groups of people who participate in what they call Fresh Start 200. That's put out by Sean Kennedy, and it's designed to help a church grow to 200. And third, 16 pastors participating in that Fresh Start 200 in the next 2 years. I'm participating in it. It lasts for 8 months. There's a conference in Birmingham, and there's monthly meetings online that I'm participating in. We have not actually started yet. We will start next week, or 2 weeks from now. The second part, meaningful disciple making. 3 new church teams involved in the program that I'm already involved in. And it's expensive. I think it's 10 grand per church. And someone else is picking up the cost for it. A 20% increase in conversions and baptisms, and 14 churches involved in reaching their immediate community. At the moment, what we're doing at Montview fits into that model completely, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that leads. I'm setting up a meeting with the administrator there just to touch base with her about the coming of next year. What can we do to help nurture that? Under multiplication, they want to do 10 new church plants. 2 of them are non-Caucasian. One of the men who was ordained on Tuesday evening was a man born in Venezuela, and he's working amongst Spanish-speaking people. 2 churches, they call them greenhouse churches, where people are being grown to plant churches. And they want someone to come out of the Fresh Start thing and teach other people to do the same thing. I don't know who that's going to be. We haven't done one yet. And finally, intentionality. They're looking for 3 district-wide mission trips in the next 2 years. 2 international and 1 national before 2020. They want 6 new churches contributing 10% to the Great Commission. 3/4 of all churches contributing 8% to the district operating budget, and every new church that's planted contributing to both of those from the beginning. So it's a pretty tall challenge. It's financially heavy. It's very directional to make the Southern District a healthy place. So where do we fit into those things? I mentioned something just a moment ago, but let's start with this little diagram. How do I measure the health of a church is really an interesting question. And this is as simple as it gets. There are 3 simple words There's the up part of church life, there's the in part of church life, and there's the out part of church life. The up is worshiping God. It's the relationship we have personally and corporately to God in worship. The song that Dave picked for this morning, It's All About Him, speaks to that issue specifically. When we gather for worship, it can be about us, it can be about how cool we are together, or it can be about God. And fighting so that worship is about God first is an important fight to always be in. That's the up part. The in part is, what do we do to grow to be like Christ, working together in Bible studies, preaching, fellowships together. The in part of church life is just ministry to each other, taking care of each other, loving on each other. It's basically what happens inside this building and what happens inside of our small groups. The out part is, what do we do to reach the people around us? And some churches do really well here, some churches do really well in, and some churches do really out. If you just do up and in, you will become very insulated, very tight, but you will eventually shrink. There has to be an out section, an out portion to church life. We have to care about the people who live next to us. We have to care about the people who live around us. We have to invest in their life. We have to get involved in their life. And I think that what's happening at Montview is a beginning point. It became obvious to me that the people who come to our church all drive quite some distance to get here. I think except for one person. Everyone lives a long way. I live a half an hour away from the church, out in the country. And we live in neighborhoods that are radically different than this one. And since being here, someone has come to us, myself and the elders, and said, I drive a bus in this area. You people, you all know who he is. Daryl Good, his wife Cheryl. We want to build a youth group in this neighborhood. This is a really mixed neighborhood. And so it will take an effort to reach the folks who live around here. He said it's a tough environment in some cases. And that's the out. Speaking to our neighbors, we'll come to that at the end, some of the things that we can specifically do. But the out part is reaching people for Christ, and that's an important element to church life. If churches never reach out, they will slowly go away. Okay? So up, in, and out is, as clear as I can say it, as simple as I can say it, what church life is all about. Worshiping God, growing in your faith, and sharing your faith and bringing new people into the body of Christ. Okay? And what are the essentials for living hope? This is kind of what I'm going to get down to, and I'll hopefully get through this quickly, and then we can take some questions and you can give me some feedback. First one, grow a healthy local church that is reaching North Huntsville by leading people to Christ, baptizing them and discipling them into a lifelong commitment to Christ, and teaching them to go and make disciples. When Daryl Good sat in my office and described that to me, I said, you're on my team. He said, this is how I would like to participate in that project. I love this area. I love the kids who I drive on the bus from this area. I want to invest in their life. And I haven't spent much time over at Montview School, but for some reason, I just care about that school. And the ladies in our church, 4 or 5 ladies who go over there, they begin to love that school, the people who work there, the teachers who serve in that school, the children who go there. And that's where it all begins. That, for me, means 2 things. First of all, it means develop ways to get the word out about our church. I heard a guy speak who's planting a church in Birmingham called the Story Church. And he said in an interview that he did on stage, they put on an Easter egg hunt last year, this past April, and sent out 20,000 invitations. Wow, that's a huge area. He uses social media to communicate with people. We don't do any of that stuff. And I thought to myself as I was sitting there, what would it look like if we did something like that, an Easter egg hunt? And he said, if we got 30 people, we would be really unhappy. Well, they got 200 kids and 100 parents. And all they did was just talk to people. They didn't invite them to a church. There's no church to invite them to yet. They haven't started the church. It hasn't opened. They just started in speaking to people, making friends, getting to know people, etc. And so, I don't know if we can do that, but there's something we can do to get the word out about our church. Social media, local events that engage parents and children, meeting basic needs of those nearest us. And that's what the discussion is going to be in a week or so with Marcia over at Montague School. She sent me a little email back. We love the women who come to our church, come to our school and service down here. This is awesome. You have been a huge blessing to us. Thank you so much, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like the door's unlocked and it's open. We just walk right in there and meet the parents whose kids go to that school. And the second thing under there is everyone does something for the kingdom through this ministry for God's glory and directly impacts our goals to grow living hope. I'm completely in favor of all the things that we do. But I'm tasked with growing our church and impacting this community. I know my personal limitations, and that could be a pretty big challenge, but nonetheless, I intend to go all in, that was the name of our conference, all in. I'm all in. I like Tony, Alabama, where I live, but I'm not all in over there. That's just where I live. I'm all in right here. When I drive around the church, come down Pulaski Pike, I'm all in. What's going on in their lives and how do we get to know who these people are? This is the out part of our challenge. One thing Daryl said to me that keeps ringing in my ears, I think God wants to work around this place, and I'm really glad your church is right here. I said, well, it's not exactly a building that's completely ready to serve people. But maybe God will help us solve that problem. Okay? The second thing is pretty practical. Make a decision about this building so that we have a viable ministry center that can adequately address the needs of this community and be a place to train someone who will plant a church in the next 5 to 10 years in Huntsville. Phil made it perfectly clear to me, we have big hopes for the church in Huntsville. We want to plant churches out of that church. Those thoughts were already in my mind before I came here, as I was coming here. And he clarified, yes, that's what we want to do in Huntsville. So we have a little committee that got together, and I have a simple plan to add two code bathrooms on our building, etc. I'm not sure that I want to pay that much money for those 2 bathrooms, but it will make our building more viable, plus fix our door situation and our exits and stuff. I don't think that the people who live in this area care that much. We need to care about them, but they don't care that much. That breaks out to two things. First of all, take our ideas for improvements to the building to the city and trust God to guide us through their decision. That's what we're stuck right there. We have to take those simple plans to the local authorities and say, can we do this without spending huge amounts of money on other stuff? And I'm just praying that God will, through them, will say, yeah, you can do that. So it's manageable financially. Secondly, if we are rejected by the cost, search for a new place that we can minister in this area for God's glory, the salvation of the lost, and the growth of new disciples. Something says we need to stay in this area. I don't know any churches around here that are knocking the socks off people. So this is a good place to be, right? The church will look a little different. I'm perfectly okay with that. But I think God has a mission in this place through our church. Phil said to me, Mark, Don't be stuck to that building. I said, I'm not. It works great, but I'm not stuck to the building. And since I've been here, someone has recommended at least one other place we could look, really close by. The third thing on my list, develop and plant a missional community. That's a term that you probably haven't heard much about. In one of our homes, out of this church that reaches lost people, that grows disciples that will last. The missional community is part of the training that I've received the 2 times I've been over near Atlanta, and I can talk about that more if you're interested. But it takes a little bit of effort and time to grow one. It's like planting a church in your house. But it's a method for growing a church. That translates to 2 things. First of all, it would take some training, but if you're willing, we can get you trained. Planting a missional community in Tony, in my house, and asking everyone to come to this church probably won't work. So it needs to be something close by that easily be part of our church. And secondly, this works best as a couples project. Not always, but works best as a couples project. The model for district conference was all in, and I was asked if I was all in. And I said, yes, I am. I'm all in. Here's the truth of the matter. I'm 65. I've only actually pastored churches that were very unhealthy. And God has used me to make them healthy places. So basically the ministry that I've been involved in has been a healing ministry. At this time in my life, I want to make a difference through the Alliance and its purposes in Huntsville, so that the day will come when we have a real voice in the Southern District, so that we are known as a place to train someone who has a heart to reach people and plant churches, so that we are known as the most generous church in the South Pacific District, in the Southern District, so that we are known as all in. And the question is, are we all in? I take huge blessing from the Jesus words to Peter. I tell you, you are Peter. Let's just insert our name. You are Living Hope. And on this rock, speaking of himself, I will build my church. And the question is, will we walk in his ways so that that happens through us, or will we just walk off on our own? Because he's going to build the church. He's going to raise up the church wherever it's planted and grow a congregation and plant more churches. He's going to do that. I have no doubt that God can do that through me, through us. And the rest of the statement is, the gates of hell will not prevail against it. There are some things that kind of push up against it. It's like, how do we get into this community? How do we get into this school? How do we get past our building issues? How do we do this? And Jesus said, the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Something tells me when we go downtown, they're going to go, okay. But I don't know. I don't really have any fear about it. I really don't. So, I want to just pray for a moment, then I want to take some questions if you have some questions in your mind. All right, let's pray. Father, we're grateful that this is our church. This is your church. You planted this church. You started this church. And these are your people. We are your people. And you have plans for us. You have something you want us to accomplish. You want the ministry of this church in this neighborhood at this time. And we want to see people one to Christ, grow up in Christ, and serve Christ at this church. So just for the record, I'm all in. And I pray, Lord, that we're all in, all of us. We're going to each do our part, and we're going to invest, we're going to commit, we're going to be all in, as long as you keep us here. We look forward to what's in store as you build your church. We pray in Christ's name.